When you're a young boy, and quite honestly even as an adult, there's not many that excites the monkey brain in us as much as good old-fashioned fast cars. There's action, there's drama, there's
family.
And quite honestly, it's amazing how varied the genre can be, especially in the realm of video games. In the past 2 months, I've played over 100 hours of the Codemasters F1 game, starting from F1 2020 all the way to the recently released F1 2025. I've also watched every Grand Prix since 2021, dipped myself into the memes, the drama, the highs and lows, and have given my best effort into learning as much as I can about this high-octane sport, which would have been easier if it wasn't for another masterpiece French baguette of a game taking my attention, but I digress. Now, there were a lot of things that clicked, but many others that didn't when it comes to these games, and there's a lot to talk about, so let's jump into it. Now, I'm not exactly a stranger to racing games. I've enjoyed them quite a bit since my days as a young Filipino boy playing Need for Speed Underground in the PS2. I personally enjoyed the street racing genre a bit more than track racing, so games like Gran Turismo and the original Forza Motorsports games were just not super appealing to me growing up. But with the positive experience I've had learning about football through FIFA and FC, do check out that video by the way, I definitely came into this feeling more open and felt excited to dive into another new sport. But of course, there are a few growing pains that I needed to get over. The one I learned early on came from my attempt to get the full immersive experience, at least as immersive as I can be with a controller. But, let's just say it was not very fun, because I had to contend with my old high school nemesis, physics. As a completely new player to these games, the learning curve is immense, and is one of the reasons that makes critiquing the games a lot tougher than other titles for me. But ironically, it's also what makes me appreciate a lot of the moving parts that goes on in F1 as a sport. And really, to Codemasters' credit, these games do feel like a great entry for someone like me who's coming into these games in sport for the first time. But things aren't all that positive, and the journey going through each game until F1 2025 was not exactly the smoothest. In fact, it's been a very strange ride to say the least. With NBA 2K and FIFA FC, I came away feeling largely tired of the experience, as in my head, there was a noticeable decline year on year. For Codemasters F1 games, it's not very clear-cut in my head, and me being new to this is definitely a factor, but also the games tend to be quite inconsistent. F1 2020, for example, was really cool because it introduced My Team, a career mode where you can manage a fictional 11th team on the grid, very similar to other sports games like FC. People, including myself, really like this feature, and I've seen a lot of longtime players comment positively about the gameplay and handling. But one of the features that I did miss a lot is the classic cars, because this is the last game where you can play them. In lieu of this, F1 22 introduced supercars, which, as we know, was a steaming pile of hot doo-doo. The funniest thing about this is that when I saw them, I was actually kind of excited because these were the types of cars I like to trick out in the NFS and Midnight Club games. That is until I actually started driving the damn things, and holy hell, they might as well have added sea shanties into the features for the game because these cars drive like fucking boats. You have any idea how demoralizing it is to do those godforsaken Pirelli hot laps over and over again until you get gold for some extra cash? All because stupid Sai from weeks ago decided that playing a broke newcomer team with engineering and financial issues was a great idea. But seriously though, I've never looked at a sports car with so much disgust in my life. And it's all because these cars just don't feel good to drive when integrated into the game's physics. Breaking Point was also really weird because on one hand, I welcome any form of narrative in my games. I know that's probably a hot take for many people who prefer to just drive or manage teams, but it's just something I genuinely enjoy in these games. But man, were the facial animations really rough at first.
Jesus Christ.
The difficulty during the first 2 episodes was kinda easy, and the setups for the chapters end up killing the immersion a bit because I'd crush any race where I would play from start to finish, but somehow Aiden would become a backmarker in the next one. I'm not against challenging scenarios like this, but it would be good to have a bit of consistency. It's also a decent attempt at capturing all of that off-track excitement and drama, but it doesn't have... Or...
There is Kimi Räikkönen. He's not even gone back to the paddock. He's got his shirt off.
He's on his boat, which has a splendid name, One More Toy.
Or,
change your car. You've got a problem. Change your fucking car.
I also prefer to have a mode where you can do some historic challenges similar to the Jordan Challenge in NBA 2K11, but for iconic moments in F1. Maybe give an opportunity for Hamilton fans to rewrite history at Abu Dhabi 2021. But yeah, thankfully, Breaking Point introduced harder difficulties, and now actually doing these scenarios are much more challenging, especially for this year's entry. Finally, making it a sporadic release felt kind of weird. It doesn't affect 24 all that much because the new driver career more than makes up for the lack of a story mode. But now F1 22 really feels like the worst game in the series because of it. Speaking of F1 24, this was also pretty divisive because on one hand, they did improve the driver career, they added cool new stuff, the driver ratings, etc. But then they added the fan zone, which is just more EA being more EA. And also there were changes to the handling that really divided players. I can't really comment too much on this because I think more experienced players are better able to articulate the difference, especially since I don't really play with a wheel. But I'm definitely not too big of a fan of the handling changing every single year, where the consensus is that it's good,
approved,
good,
approved,
bad,
dog shit,
great,
I don't know,
good. Because as a new player to the series, most times this just manifests as the driving feeling really off, creating a bit of frustration because I can't fully tell if it is a skill issue, a car issue, or the game's engine. But I do acknowledge that this is something that I could discern better later when I develop more time and skill with the game, so I'll defer to other people's judgment in the meantime. It's also worth pointing out that graphics-wise, these games hardly look any different year to year, which I don't really care about, but some changes to the UI or audio are definitely a mixed bag for me. It's weird because the range is so wide sometimes. I get something like F1 21 where the driving HUD is okay, but the menu is ass, or 24 where the HUD is ass and the menu looks okay. Driver customization is lackluster, even more so now that even basic clothes require Bitcoin, and the music in these games are kinda eh. Thankfully, they do change up the interviewer, and now, instead of Jeff, we've got Mark as our engineer, who, like Jeff, will say some funny stuff at even funnier moments. These inconsistencies, while some are quite small, build up and make it very difficult to appreciate new features, which most times I welcome because we don't often see developers, especially those under EA, actually working on non-live service features like career or story modes. But execution matters, and if it makes the game experience feel worse, you definitely risk alienating your core players. Speaking of live service, I'm really starting to see the signature EA footprint coming into the series. To be fair, I've seen posts and comments that Codemasters were already heading down this monetization route anyway before EA acquired them, but it does start to become a lot more apparent. One example is that features that were initially free now have to be bought with Bitcoin. Driver celebrations and suit designs for career are the obvious ones because they actually increase the options going into F1 23, but now they've cut it to like 1 or 2. And you have to buy the others, which is disappointing, but not exactly surprising. F1 World and Fan Zone are just some of the more unnecessary fluff they put in, with Podium Pass and Bitcoins being the major reward systems that give you stuff in these games. Now, if you enjoy these, that's great. I won't yuck your yum, but I feel like if they can improve the rewards, especially the VIP ones, to have stuff that actually contribute to gameplay, they could be creating more engaged players who, again, would be more willing to spend a bit more money. Like, do they have any idea how many people would actually pay to get classic cars and tracks back into the games and actually have a mode that integrates them like the F1 Classics mode of 2013? You don't even have to make a new mode, just make the cars, drivers, or even teams unlockable for driver and my team careers and create an option to run classic tracks in the calendar and you'd be golden. They've already been doing this with driver icons anyway, so I feel like there is an opportunity to expand this a little bit more. Now, I understand that this is a matter of licensing and other logistic issues, especially with yearly releases for the game, so definitely not possible, especially within the current framework under EA. And to be honest, it may be for the best right now, because the way I can see them monetizing these additional tracks outside of DLC is by doing something that they already do in other games, like the expansion pack Nightmare of Sims 4, or God forbid, gambling through gacha and booster packs. But to be honest, I think one of the main things that's really holding back this full transition into live service is the fact that online multiplayer in these games is a complete shit show. Sometimes you gotta be careful what you wish for, because I started feeling nostalgic about Burnout, and well, wouldn't you have it, I did in fact get a close equivalent.
Come again. Okay, I've got a brand new race strategy on your MFT if you want to go and check it out.
I'm not gonna lie. To me, this is the most entertaining mode, just because of the pure carnage that happens. Literally, any chicane feels like a death sentence. I know how frustrating this can be for more serious competitors, and I really empathize, but anytime I want a good laugh, I just rock up to a random lobby that's open to anyone and see the magic happen. Or I watch one of Super GT's annual F1 videos. They're top tier. For real though, I hear that this is a big problem for a lot of online racing games, except the ones with higher barriers to entry like iRacing. It's such a bad system because it doesn't really leave a lot of room for serious competitiveness. Penalty systems are so broken sometimes where I'd get rammed from behind. Wait a minute, that doesn't sound right, but I'd still get a 3-second penalty. Lots of trolls bumping into other players on purpose for the laughs, I guess, or for spite. And for a time, the chaos is funny, but then when I try to legitimately do a clean race, it gets really annoying. If EA and Codemasters really want to ramp up live service revenue in a way that's actually good for players, they need to fix multiplayer, which requires them to enforce discipline so that players will actually want to play multiplayer. They'll spend more on cosmetics, they'll create communities, etc. Race penalties and labels saying clean drivers only for your lobbies mean shit if a random 12-year-old can just hop in, ruin the game, and jump to another lobby to do the same BS without any repercussions. But then you're the one left with a totaled car and possibly a ruined ranked game. In the end, it's a bit of a rough spot. I can definitely imagine the frustration that longer-term players have been experiencing when it comes to these games, especially as some of the stuff I said was actually already in older games, but then they took them out. With an annual release as a model, it's going to be very hard to see massive improvements happen unless they get a competitor that could also license. That said, going into F1 25 was actually pretty okay. I fully expected them to ignore the player and my team career modes from F1 2020 like what FIFA does, and I'm pleasantly surprised that they overhauled both of them starting with the driver career last year. My team now has a lot more features for players to work with the separate owner and driver aspects being considered, and I like how they modified engineering to have a research and development component that will now require you to consider how you allocate some of these upgrades to your drivers. We also got Chapter 3 of Breaking Point, and even a game mode for the F1 movie that I will be checking out the week this video goes up, so I'm happy to comment my thoughts on it below when I get the chance to watch it on theaters. And finally, they actually allow you to customize the liveries a bit more because the generic designs from before were seriously getting old. Overall, as someone who basically played all of these back to back, so my memory of them is very fresh, 25 is actually a pretty good step forward. But the question remains, is that a $60 to $70 step? And that depends where you're coming from. In my opinion, the series is not as egregious as FC. I mean, they actually attempt to add improvements and features to single-player content alongside the multiplayer live service ones. But a lot of these features should have come earlier, and some either come as fixes to past mistakes or they make things worse. It's definitely more forgivable if the releases are more sporadic, so if you're watching this having played only 2020 to 2022 maybe, I think it is a decent enough jump. But if you're planning on waiting for it to get on Game Pass or on a massive sale later this year, then I think that's okay as well. 23 and 24 are both on there, so it's very likely that after a while, 2025 will make its way there as well. But it is the same type of business model that any other EA franchise, or hell, even a smartphone does. So no real reason to buy full price, unless perhaps you skip 24 or a particular feature like Breaking Point or the new My Team career justifies it for you. The devs do come up with some great ideas sometimes, and they just need to be a bit more consistent with execution. Now, to be fair, my runtime with the games has been short, so if you do disagree with my opinion on this, feel free to voice it out, especially if you've been playing these games for far longer. And even after all this, I've barely even made a dent on the technical aspects of these games and the sport. The way more experienced players dig deeper into the setups, tire temps, and degradation, the detailed differences in handling across games and tracks, it can be really overwhelming, and it's not even going into the more serious aspects of sim racing like you'd see in games like Assetto Corsa or iRacing. I'm just a random dude who likes games and likes to try stuff through them, and I came out of this thinking that there's far more to learn. So if you feel like I missed anything from these games, or if you want me to dive into the other racing franchises as well, do shout it out in the comments below. And as for F1 as a sport, it's just a load of fun. McLaren have been cooking this year, and I'm kind of glad I got to skip the overwhelming domination that Red Bull had the past few years, and maybe see things shake up since McLaren haven't won a championship since 2008. I'll keep track of the action, the drama, the memes, and maybe one day find an opportunity to watch a Grand Prix here in the UK. Tickets are damn expensive though, but I'll give it my best shot. But that's it for me. This was an incredibly fun and really weird journey for me. If you have any recommendations for hobbies or sports to explore through the video games, do let me know in the comments below, and do let me know if I missed anything about these games that people need to know. Like and subscribe if you like what you see. This is Sai from Fireplace Gaming, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.